But the thing was, is I never really got like a clear-cut answer of why they were charging me until the next step of this was a preliminary hearing. They give reasons of why they charged you. They don't necessarily disclose evidence. So it's not like a trial. It's just basically they say, all right, this is what we have. This is why we charged him. You know, he can come back and say, well, this is why you shouldn't have charged him. And then the judge makes the decision to send it to trial. So we go in there, and the detective that was on the case was a woman, and she was recently promoted. I was her first murder case ever. So that made me a little nervous in and of itself. And I think a lot of that may have been what led to this. I think maybe it was a little overzealous.
So who is the one that decided to charge you with murder?
Well, the detective at the end of the day is the one that decided to charge. Yeah. All her reports wrote up that they were going to, the evidence that they looked at, they concluded they were going to charge me with murder. So the detective is the one that wrote up the report to charge me. I'm not sure who above her like signed off on it. I'm sure somebody did, maybe sheriff or someone along those lines.
What about that report made it not self-defense?
Well, that's what I'm going to get into here in the preliminary hearing, because in the reports that they give the pathologist gave, it said the bullet path doesn't indicate like a close contact shooting. Well, the bullet path, at least one of them, because there were three, but one of them, it enters here, and it exits lower. So how you get that is if I'm coming at you, at an attack mode. So it's like if you're like this and the bullet goes straight through, it's going to enter higher but exit lower. It's still in a straight line. It's just got a different entry and exit point.
But bullets don't always go in and out of people in a straight line.
Correct. Right? If they hit bone, they can go God knows where. I mean, they can bounce around inside the body. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that trajectory can get thrown off. This one going through and through actually proved my point more than some of them that would go a different way, because it was a straight shot
going down, like charging at you.
Yeah, because when he was coming back at me, that's when I fired. So it all lined up. But the way she wrote the report was like it wasn't, it wasn't conclusive to be like in a close contact shooting.
Okay.
Another thing was blood spatter. So during the night everything happened, I had on a white long sleeve shirt. Forward spatter is kind of like backwards, but forward spatter is what, if I shoot you, would come out onto me. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Back spatter is what goes. No, I'm sorry. It's back spatter. If I shoot you, back spatter is what comes onto me. Forward spatter is what goes out that way. They were saying that there was no blood spatter on me, which to them indicated that we were not in close proximity to each other. But the guy was wearing 3 shirts. He had on like a regular t-shirt, then like a wicking, like Under Armour type shirt, and then like a longer sleeve shirt with a hoodie over top of that. So the likelihood of any blood spatter coming out of 3 layers of clothes is going to be very, very minimal, if not straight up non-existent, because it can't travel through all that. And again, like I said, these were steel jacket rounds. They're not like hollow points that's going to make these massive holes. And so that was another reason why they said charge me. They said the bullet path didn't line up to be a close contact shooting. There was no blood transfer on me from the shooting, nor from me delivering life-saving measures. And I was just like, well, how are you going to say that I didn't go put that towel on him? Because there was nobody else in the house. It's just me and him. And when the arriving officer comes there, the towel was literally sitting on him. So I'm like, there's nobody else who could have put that towel on him but me. And I can't help that there wasn't any blood. It just happened to be that way. I know some crime scenes, there's a shitload of blood. This one, there was none. And so that was really it. Like there was no other, they didn't bring up anything about, well, text message this and text that. That was really like it that they brought up. And, my lawyer's fighting back with his reasoning. And the judge even says, she looks at him and she goes, there's not a lot here. She said, but given the situation, I'm going to bind it to trial. So that means we're going to trial. So we leave there, kind of regrouping, figuring out what to do. And Andy already told me, he said, if they bind it to trial, he said, then the first thing I do is make a motion for a Duncan hearing, which is basically a hearing for self-defense. And when you do that, like in a regular trial, the burden of proof is on the state to prove you're innocent. When you're doing a self-defense, it's flipped. The burden of proof is on you to prove that you acted in self-defense. And so that's really what we were planning on. And at this point, this is like, like I said, July. We didn't hear anything else. We never went to trial again. We never done anything else. Recently, I actually started a podcast myself. It started getting some legs on it, and I had the opportunity to go to New York to talk with some guys up there. So I'm on house arrest this whole time. Like, that was part of my bond. Can't have guns.
So wait,
can't have knives.
They didn't give you any sort of idea when the trial would happen?
Nope. No idea when it would happen. My lawyer said that he was going to make the motion for the Duncan hearing. Obviously, in this point in time, they're still running tests, getting stuff back. Because SLED, like, I'm sure everybody knows this, but it's not like fucking CSI Miami. You don't get shit back in a half an hour. Like, I think it was almost a year before they got reports back from SLED. And in those reports, it showed, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, because I'm in South Carolina. Those reports indicated that not only was he on prescription pills because he was diagnosed with PTSD from the Army, he was also on steroids, and he was also 3 times the legal limit in alcohol. Now, and one thing, I'm going to back up just 1 minute because I forgot about this. In the preliminary hearing, when the detective was on the stand, she lied on the stand at least 5 times that we had documented proof of. So one, and even some of them were minuscule, but they were still lies.
This is after the trial starts?
Yeah, well, this is that preliminary hearing that I was telling you about.
Preliminary hearing.
Yeah,
okay, gotcha.
I skipped over that, but it's important. She's like, in her reports that she wrote, she says she collects 2 vials of steroids from a trash can where he was at. Well, in the preliminary hearing, she said there was only 1. She also says that when the arriving officer got there, that I was so distraught that I locked the door to the house. Never happened. Like, he walked right the fuck in. I'd just come out the door. I think it was still open.
Did you question her when she said this?
I can't. This is the part to where, like, this is where it's difficult in the preliminary hearing because you can't question. Okay. You can't question like that. It's not a time to like debate facts. It's just presenting the evidence of why. Okay. So it's really frustrating to hear him say shit that are lies. And she even said that there was they were talking about, history of violence. And he said, well, he has a history of violence. And my lawyer's like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, he's not allowed at the school to pick up his son. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the fuck? And so what happened, this is like a real crazy part. My wife works at the high school in our neighborhood. She's the guidance counselor there. At some point during our separation, obviously no separations go 100% smooth. So we were arguing. She overhears my wife arguing with me. She goes on her own and makes a report saying, overheard an employee arguing with husband, just making note if something was to happen here at the school. That's it.
Who was the one who did this?
A school resource officer that worked there.
Okay.
So she makes this report. She didn't tell my wife. She spelled my wife's name wrong on the report. She didn't notify the principal. She just wrote it and turned it in. So that's the report that this detective was talking about. So after this is over, like, I didn't even know anything about it because I couldn't tell my lawyer. I'm like, that's bullshit. But he don't really know exactly what's going on. So we go to the principal. This is after the preliminary hearing. And we go, he's like, what is she talking about? And he's like, I've got no idea. He's like, I've never even met that man. He's like, I've seen him a few times at functions for the school because he had a daughter that cheers here. And she said, I've seen him sometimes come and pick up his son because the middle school or the elementary school where my son went to school, it's basically all right there in the same area. They have a tunnel they walk through and they can come out at the high school. So I would go over there and pick him up. And he said, if anybody tells anyone that they can't come on this campus for any reason, he's like, number 1, that's going to come from me. Number 2, there's going to have to be documentation to back that up, reasoning why. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done. And he's like, I've never had any dealings with him. I've never known him to cause any issues. And he says, as far as I'm concerned, if he pulled up here today, I would have no issue with him coming in the building, getting his son, whatever it is. Because I would go up there and, talk to my wife in her office. So she made it seem like in the court that I was this violent dude that wasn't even allowed to come pick up my kid from school, which was totally false. Even the report that was written didn't even say that.
Sounds like the detective had a bone to pick with you.
For some reason, or either she was just new at this point. She might have fucked up and she was trying to, make herself look good in there. I don't know what she was doing. I mean, I didn't know this woman. I didn't know her from Adam. I don't know if she was just trying to.
Well, why would a detective purposely change facts?
I've been asking myself that question for about 5 years. And technically, you're supposed to be in trouble for that. Like, even though that wasn't a trial, it was a preliminary hearing. But like, if you lie under oath, they're still under oath during all this. If you lie under oath, like, that's grounds to, be fired, possibly even do time.
Is it possible that detectives like that can get promoted for making cases like this more of a slam dunk for a prosecutor?
I think that's generally how it is. Because that's how it is for prosecutors in general. I mean, that's how they move up the ladder. They move up the ladder by putting people in prison.